Hello, thanks for tuning in today. So we will be still covering a topic on algebra fractions, but then the focus here of today, we're going to cover a common question on subject of formula. Okay, so because of subject of formula, there are many different kinds of question that's involved, but I will assure you, if you could follow these 4 steps diligently, you would be able to solve 90+% of subject of formula question. Okay, the weightage of subject of formula question is, I wouldn't say very high. At most, it will only come up with 1 or 2 times. Depends on the school. Okay, most times I see that this is not a question that will come out often many times. I mean, they will just typically come up once or twice in the exam. Right? But I think that it's still important to cover because a lot of students, whenever they face this question, they tend to get stumbled upon. Right? They will not know what to do with it. Okay. Now, so in the subject of formula question, basically you are trying to change the main character from one to another. So if you notice the current question, what they are giving you is basically A as a subject. You can see that A is by itself on the left hand side without being able to find any more A on the right hand side. You don't notice, right? So that is considered as A as a subject because A is the only thing by itself found on the left side of the equation. So what the question is asking you to do is to rearrange this equation until you get a B as the subject that you want equals to blah 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 on the other side that has no more B on the right side. So the only B that appears will be by itself on the left hand side at the end of the question. All right. And the first thing you want to do is to get rid of the most complicated thing that you see. The first thing that it seems to look pretty hard for you to continue, and that is basically the cube root sign. Okay, you're supposed to get rid of the 4b from the denominator because you want to gather a single b out of it, right? But you can't deal with the fraction first because they are stuck inside the cube root. So the first thing you should do is to basically do the opposite of the cube root, which is to cube both sides. Let me repeat again. You have to do the opposite of a cube root to get this fraction to be unstuck first. Then you can handle the fraction, isn't it? So I'm going to cube root both sides, and that will mean you put a bracket on the entire thing. Then we'll get a cube. And cube root and cube will basically cancel out. So you're left with the fraction without that window shelter thing that prevents anything done for the side, right? So now you have a fraction on the right hand side together with a cube on the left. The next thing you're going to do is to remove the denominator. That is probably the second annoying thing to deal with, right, in the question. So you will want to get rid of this denominator, and there are different school of thoughts to understand it, but of course most schools will tell you that if you want to remove the fraction, it will be the same as you move it to the left side, and the division will become a multiplication, right? So if you move to the left, it becomes a times 4b, which means on the left side you will have a cubed times 4b. Pretty weird way to write. Typically we put the number in the most left. All right, and so on the right hand side there is no more fraction that we have to get troubled with. We are only left with the numerator. Right, so we have successfully done with our first step of the equation. The first step in the change of subject of formula question is to make the equation become term by term. Okay, I say again, make the equation becomes term by term. And what term by term basically means is you do not want to see any sort of fractions, cube root, square root, cube that is preventing you from continuing manipulating the equation easily, right? Such as just now, if you see everything on the right side stuck inside the cube root, it's pretty hard to continue without removing it, isn't it? So now when we make them term by term, meaning you can see that on the left side, this is considered as one term, this is the second term, and this is the third term. So they are all term by term without any fractions, cube root, square root, power of 2 in the bracket whatsoever is nicely separated out. Okay. Now we're going to move on to step number 2, which is to gather all the subject terms on the same side. Anything that is not on the same, that doesn't have the subject, is going to be moved to the other side. Okay, so what I mean by that is, since we want B to be the subject, we're going to move all the things that has B to the same side, which I would prefer in this case to the left side. Usually you will want the subject to be on the left side, right? And thus the positive 2B will move to the left and become a negative B, which means that my 1 that has no B attached to it is going to be the only thing that stays on the right alone, okay? But you don't want to move the 1 over because it doesn't have any subject terms. So what we have just done is to achieve steps number 2, to get the subject terms, the terms that has B, to be on the same side. Now the next problem that we will have after this is, how do you get the B to be alone by itself? That is the idea that we want, right? You can see that both terms have B, so you can see B found in 2 different terms. So what is the thing you will do next? You got to factorize the common subject out of it. Okay, so you don't really worry about factorizing everything else. Some of the students, when they see factorize, they are used to factorizing all the highest common factor away. But the important here is just to get the B out from the rest. It doesn't really matter whether you factorize the rest. In fact, you are making things more complicated if you take out the other common factors, right? So step number 3 here, we are going to factorize out the common B, which means you divide the common B from both terms within the bracket, and so you're left with 4a cubed minus 2 inside the bracket. Right? On the right hand side, you will just have 1. And lastly, to make B the subject, you are going to get rid of this bracket thing that is attached to it, right? And what is the relationship between B and this bracketed group here? They are actually multiplying to each other. Whenever you put terms side by side without any sign, what it means is multiplication. So this bracketed group is basically known as the coefficient of B. And what you're going to do is to remove that is going to do a division. You're going to divide the coefficient away so that you only have B found by itself on the left hand side, right? So times this thing, move over to the right side, it becomes division, which means 1 divided by 4a cubed minus 2. Now, do you get confused regards to whether is it 4a cubed minus 2 divided by 1 or 1 divided by 4a cubed minus 2? The other way that you can sort of understand this is, if you want to get rid of the 4a cubed minus 2 on the left hand side, you just need to make sure that you divide by the same thing on both sides, right? So if you follow the understanding of how we normally do the mathematics, it will be basically 1 divided by 4a cubed minus 2, which is why 1 is the numerator, over is division, right? And the 4a cubed minus 2 is now the double check, just make sure that on the right hand side there is no more B that could be found. And if there is no more B, there you go. This is your final answer. Cheers, guys.